Welcome to Ordinary Teachers and Students, where we get to hear teachers and students tell us their extraordinary stories. My hope is that through this podcast, ordinary teachers from around the world can relate to the stories they hear and get some timely suggestions and ideas. My name is Alan Cheng, and I'm a secondary school teacher in the UK, a life coach, and a former university lecturer. My mission is to make the education system a better place for all. Today, I'm delighted to invite Alexia onto our podcast. Alexia, born and raised in Barcelona, Spain, is about to graduate from an LLB, that's a Bachelor of Laws at Queen Mary University of London. She's then heading to undertake an LLM, that's a Masters of Laws, this August at the College of William and Mary in Virginia, USA. Before university, Alexia undertook 2 years abroad, one in a small town in the United States and another in Hong Kong. And that's where I met Alexia. She was in my English class. She shocked me with her level of English and maturity. But unfortunately, COVID cut short her stay in Hong Kong. And that's why I am very, very excited to have a chance to catch up with Alexia today. So let's welcome Alexia. Hi, Alexia.
Hello, thank you so much for the invitation.
You've been all over the place, right? So based on that intro,
Yeah.
Where are you based right now? Are you back home in Spain at this moment?
Right now I'm back in Spain for the summer holidays. I'm actually going back to Hong Kong this summer for the first time. I
Oh,
don't think many people do
really?
yet. Yes,
Oh,
I'm going back to Crystal's home for like 7 days, so very excited to go
that
back.
is very exciting. Oh, that's great. I wish I was in Hong Kong to see you, but this is the second best option. Anything to add to that intro? So obviously we know that you're about to start a Masters of Law. Anything you want else to tell us about you?
Um, I think that introduction is good. I think maybe if someone else has listened to other of the episodes, I was in Eugenia's and Xavier's class, which I think it's interesting
Mm,
to know.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and you and Xavier were quite a pair in terms of being students in my class. Shall we go back to your? So I didn't really know you too well, like in terms of what your primary school life was like. So I'd be interested to hear just a little bit about what your primary school life was like.
Of course. So I think in primary school I was a very normal normal kid. I
Hmm.
just went to school. I didn't really like too much sports though. I still did them
Oh,
because my parents wanted me to.
oh,
Yeah, that changed later on.
yeah, yeah.
Um, But yeah, I didn't quite like sports. I just went to school, played in the playground with my friends, and
Mm,
that was pretty much it. I think the only bit that was quite interesting, and I think it shaped me as a student while I was in
mm.
primary, was when I was in year three. I don't know if it's the
Okay.
same in Hong Kong,
Mm.
but yeah, in year three, I had an exam of Roman numbers.
Oh,
And
okay.
Roman culture. Like, yeah, very, very random.
Mm,
But
mm.
yeah, I would say I was an average student back in primary.
Yep.
And that weekend before that exam, I went skiing with my family, and I just didn't really study that much for that exam. And I failed very, very badly on that exam.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I remember like, well, I was young, so I cried in, in the
Mm.
classroom. And then the teacher um, allowed me to retake the exam,
Oh, okay.
which I think that really shaped who I became later as a student because that second chance, I studied a lot
Mm,
for that exam. It ended up
mm.
being the same exam, which I didn't quite expect because otherwise I would just have I would have just like memorized the answers, and I didn't. But I think that second chance that teacher gave me um, really pushed me later to study a lot more for my exams.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, it was quite important. So yeah, that was year three. And then for the next 3 years, they changed classes in year four, and I
mm,
really, really enjoyed my primary years.
mm,
Um, and it was when I went into secondary school.
mm,
I guess it was in the smoothest transition for me.
mm.
I don't know if it has anything to do that my birthday's in October, so I'm always um like one of the smallest kids in my class.
Right.
But
Okay.
I still felt like a kid in a way. And
Mm,
when
mm,
we went into secondary school, many of the people cared a lot about, wearing makeup, wearing bags, the way people dressed, and I still wanted to play in the playground.
mm.
So, so yeah, I guess for me the first 2 years of secondary year, seventh and eighth. I don't know how it
Mm,
correlates. I think first and second.
yep.
Um, yeah, they were just like I felt like I didn't belong in a way because I still felt
Mm,
like I wanted to do more of those childish things in a
yep.
way. But yeah, then in year three, that's when I did my year abroad to the
Ah,
US.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Um,
What was the motivation
and
behind that? What was it like something that you
yeah,
always wanted to do?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. Yeah, it's something that I always wanted to do. Since I was, I think, in year six in primary.
Mm,
I saw older kids going abroad, maybe
mm,
to closer, like in the UK or in
mm,
Ireland, or just for 2 weeks.
mm,
But maybe I don't know, I just really wanted to see the world as well, and I think
mm.
what made it easier was because I didn't feel like I belonged those first 2 years. I didn't really care of
Ah,
leaving,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
my home school.
Mm,
Um, then but yeah, I really, really wanted to do it, and what's interesting was that it was for my 13th birthday.
oh,
My
wow. Mm.
my birthday present was going abroad
Wow,
to
that's
the
amazing.
United States. Yeah, and I was super excited about it. And I think really that year changed, like, the person I became later on.
Mm,
And I went from being an average student in
mm,
Spain,
mm.
to I think becoming a more unique student later on that had a lot of drive and passion towards
Yep.
what I wanted to do. Um,
What do you
so
think
yeah,
helped you change? Like, what was it kind of, I mean, the most basic thing would be your English, right? Was that like something that
yeah.
affected you, like increased confidence in your own English ability, or were there other things like, for example, taking care of yourself and just maturing quicker suddenly?
Um, I think, of course, English was the main thing my family wanted me to
Yeah.
learn, when
Mm,
they decided to allow me to go abroad for a year.
yeah.
But for me personally, English is not what I took away
Mm,
from my experience. Um, I think uh, I learned a lot. Yes, taking care of myself, but most importantly, it was at school where I learned the most,
mm,
and what I wanted school and my education to look like in the next years.
mm.
I think in this is just my experience in Spain, so
Sure,
I don't
sure.
want to overgeneralize.
Sure, sure, sure.
But at least from my experience in my school in Spain, the teachers focused a lot on the grades, and
Mm,
school was just about memorizing and then
mm,
leaving everything in an exam. There's nothing else to school like that. And
mm,
also, weirdly, they focused a lot on failure. And I felt
mm,
like they didn't really want students to
mm,
make the most of themselves, or I don't really know how to explain it, but um, at least in my school, it was very easy um, to fail, in a
yeah.
way. Not easy. I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it, but um, they didn't really push you. And if
Yep.
you, for example, I was always a student that if I got a seven, I was sad
Mm,
about it. I really wanted to get nines, tens,
mm,
the
mm,
highest grade
mm,
possible, right? And that was annoying in a way. For
mm,
I felt like it was annoying for the teachers. And when I went to the US, the teachers pushed me very hard. They were
mm,
always very happy that I always had more questions.
mm,
Um,
mm,
they were not looking for other students. Like they were like, no, not Alexia, because she already asked a question.
mm,
They
mm,
allowed
mm,
me um, to learn more of what I wanted to. They pushed me to become the best student, and they really cared. And also school wasn't just about memorizing and putting everything in a test. Not really like the complete
mm,
opposite. School
mm,
was about doing other clubs outside of school, doing sports. That's here when
mm.
I
Yeah, yeah.
also fell in love with sports. As I
Mm,
said before,
mm,
I wasn't really a sports person.
mm.
Um, and I really wanted to go to school every single morning. I woke up and I wanted to go to the school bus and go
That's
to school.
amazing. Mm,
Yeah, and it really shifted my perspective in terms of education and what I wanted to do later on, because that's where I
Mm,
also joined a club for debate,
mm,
and it was
mm.
about laws as well. So it was also about what I wanted to do in the future. Um, so yeah, it really opened
Yeah,
my
yeah.
eyes to a whole array of opportunities.
Yeah, I can tell it just like how much it affected you that one year. Do you think you can put a bit of context onto that chance to go abroad? Like, I mean, within the context of your school and kind of the school district that you're in Spain, is it something of a luxury to be able to go overseas, or is it something quite common that people can go on an exchange like this?
I think people have to realize it's quite of a luxury, I'd
Mm,
say, to
mm,
go abroad. Um, it was not with like my school offered to go
mm,
to year abroad later on, not that early,
yep,
um, with other organizations.
mm,
Um, but I didn't do it within my school. It's
mm,
something that my parents looked elsewhere.
mm, mm, mm.
Um, and I think it's always a luxury and a privilege, also because a lot of families don't want to send their kids abroad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's also a privilege in terms that my family also accepted that I would go abroad for
Mm,
2 years, because
mm.
later on I also went to Hong Kong.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think it's definitely doable. When I went to Hong Kong, it was with a different organization
Mm, mm,
that it's non-profit.
mm.
Um, and it's definitely way more affordable, and there's also scholarships.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a luxury, but people can do it if they really
Right.
want to do it.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So, like you mentioned just now, you went on a second exchange. So, how did that come about? Like, because, actually, I guess
Yeah,
my first question would be when you went back to Spain, did you have to repeat a year or were you able to advance to the next year already based on what you did in the US?
yeah. So no, I went very early on, so
Yep.
there was no really requirements to convalidate when I went back to Spain. So
Okay.
I went straight to the next year,
Okay.
and
Mm.
how Hong Kong came about was quite random, because of course I just left a year
Mm.
abroad. I didn't expect to go anywhere
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
maybe
Exactly.
in university, right?
Mm. Mm.
But I didn't expect to go abroad during high school again. Um, it was one day I was coming back from it was 2 days with the school that we went away,
Mm.
and my mom came to pick me up, and I was going to see actually one of my friends that I made in the year abroad in the US, that was
Okay.
also from Barcelona. And before dropping me off, she was like, "Oh, by the way, would you like to go on a year abroad to Hong Kong?" Just
Mm.
like that. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I left. It was so it was so random.
Wow.
But I think one of the things that I learned when I went abroad was to say yes to all the opportunities
Yeah.
that came
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't really think much about um well, it was going to be a much more difficult experience because I didn't know the language in a way.
Mm.
And the culture is much more different from
Of course.
Western culture,
Yeah.
which is more similar Spanish and
Mm,
the
mm,
US.
mm, mm, mm,
But I was just like, yeah, it sounds like a cool experience. I'm gonna learn so much about it. Yes,
mm,
and then after that, of course, I thought more about it. I did the whole application
mm, mm,
um to apply, um, but I think well, of course, my family after that wanted me to try more things because they saw it really helped me, because it changed
mm,
me also as a person. Even my friends after I came back from the US saw me as a completely different person, much more mature as well. Um,
mm.
and I guess they also wanted me to see another side of the world
Yeah.
in Asia. And so that was more my parents gave me the possibility, and I said yes.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
and I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, very random.
Yeah. So, what was your expectation of Hong Kong, and did it meet that expectation, would you say? So, I'm guessing it was quite a different experience from that of the US.
Yeah. So why before I went to Hong Kong, I told myself I didn't want to see any pictures of Hong Kong.
Okay.
I
Mm,
think
mm,
every time that I go abroad, even for university, and I did the same thing when I went to the US. I try to put the lowest expectations possible, so that
mm,
way, if it's bad, well, I already thought that, and if it's good, well, it's good. I don't know
mm,
if
mm,
it's a
mm,
good mechanism,
mm, mm,
but yeah, so I didn't look at any pictures of how Hong Kong was gonna be. I
mm,
just had, of course, my host family's information because I saw the
mm,
pictures of them. But I just didn't really expect much. Um, Aside from I was gonna go to a different culture and tried my best
Mm-mm.
to blend in. So I really cannot tell you expectations because of course they were
Sure.
much higher. But it's because
Mm-mm.
I put myself in a very negative space out of choice. But I guess the only expectation I had was that I thought, I don't know why, but this was just common. I thought maybe they were going to be more closed off, people in Hong Kong.
Mm, mm,
Um, and it was going to be way harder to make friends.
mm,
Because of the language, I guess I also thought that.
mm,
But it was super easy to make friends with Doris, which was one of my classmates
mm, mm,
in Hong Kong. I think it was the first or the second day in school. She just already added me to a WhatsApp group
mm,
chat
mm,
of
mm.
her group of friends, which
Yep.
I really, really appreciated.
I think that really helps.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because it really introduced me to, to be with people and do things,
Mm,
and I didn't feel alone in a school that I was the only exchange student.
mm.
Um, so that, I guess that's the only thing that, yeah, I thought people were gonna be more closed off, and it was the complete
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah. I would like to hear your critical views. So I know you're quite a critical, in a good way, okay, critical views
Yeah.
of the Hong Kong education system based on what you saw. Because like, I mean, like I said just now, you did only get half a year, was it? You had to leave in
Mhm.
January, wasn't it?
February 2nd, I think
February,
it was.
yeah, yeah. So based on what you saw, what is your
Mhm.
view of the Hong Kong education system? Very interested to hear this.
Sure. I think first off, I'd like to preface, talking about convalidation.
Mm,
Hong Kong was different. I did have to do three schools at the same time when I was in Hong Kong to be able
yeah,
to not have to redo a year.
I remember you
Um,
telling me.
so
Yeah,
so that meant I was going to Hong Kong school from, I don't remember, it was 8 to 4, or
something
I
like
don't
that.
know quite
Yeah, yeah,
remember,
yeah, something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'd go home and I'd do my Spanish school online. And then on
Mm,
top of that, I was doing already a second high school of American high school to graduate with the American high school diploma. So I had to do three schools plus, of course, sports if I did sports, because
mm,
I played softball, and then other activities I did with my
mm,
family.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
let's just say that when I went to Hong Kong school, for me it was fun. As
mm,
in,
mm,
I didn't really quite focus on getting the highest grades, even though I think
mm,
in the midterm report I was still like top 8 of the
mm, mm,
of
mm,
the
mm,
of
mm,
the of the grades. But I had fun when I went to school.
mm.
So I just want to put that as a comment,
Okay.
because
Yeah, yeah.
for people that wanted to go to university from that system, they put a lot more effort and
Mm,
focus on getting the highest grades possible. But for me, it was fun, and I went to school, and yeah, I had fun and I was with people. The system itself, I think it was still much better than my home system in Spain.
mm, mm,
Because it had still this strictness of getting good
mm.
grades, and I could see that the people around me
Yeah, yeah,
really focused on the grades, especially because I think the year above they had DSC, or 2 years
yeah.
from then.
2 years later. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so they really put a lot of effort in getting good grades. Um, but outside of that, I still the school still provided a lot of other opportunities
Mm,
for kids, for students to do other things. Like there was clubs, there was a
mm,
Spanish
mm.
club, I remember, because I was part of that.
Yeah.
There was debate, but I think that was second semester, I'm not sure.
Mm,
They also had like the house system, so they had
yeah.
days to do fun stuff.
Mm,
Um, uh, like I remember there was many other things that the students could get involved themselves
yeah.
with outside
Mm,
of grades. So I think it was a mix of Spain that in my view it's
mm,
merely just memorizing, going to school and
mm,
doing exams, and that's it.
mm.
And the US, which I think in the US, yes, you have to get good grades, but I think everyone passes, and then the hard part
Yeah,
is getting the grades
yeah.
maybe, and
Mm,
like so much like outside of school. It was a blend of that. Um, and yeah, I think that's my opinion
yeah.
about it. It was much more strict in terms of course, uniforms, and like you had to
Yeah.
wear the hijab.
What
For
was
me, it
that
was
the first time that you had to wear a uniform?
yeah.
How was that? Like when you were forced to wear a uniform?
The uniform itself was in Spain. Other schools wear uniforms, so I've seen it
Yeah.
before. It was more like
Okay.
you had to wear the hair up, you couldn't wear any
Oh yeah.
bracelet, you had to,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
shoes had to be black, and the backpack also had to be black, which I thought was super strict because of course
Mm,
I had never experienced that before. But in a way, I really liked it because it gave an equal sense of everyone was equal, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
really see any differences in terms of
Yeah, yeah.
what people were, which in Spain sometimes could be an issue, or
Mm.
it could make people feel more or less comfortable around other people. And also, I didn't have to think when I woke up what I wore, so for
True,
me it
yeah,
was
that's the
great.
biggest thing, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if I was quite critical or not, but
No, no,
yeah,
that's
it
an
was just
interesting view,
planned
yeah.
in.
Yeah. Well, so we've heard a lot about your background, your exchange experiences. So normally we do take a deeper dive into a particular topic of your choice in terms of anything related to education. I wonder whether you had anything in mind to talk about.
I think what I had in mind was, well, the fact that I went to different school systems really
Mm.
allowed me to see. I guess this is more about school itself rather than specific teachers,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
also have things to talk about. But in
sure.
general, I think my experience has allowed me to see different schools and how they do things. And the main thing that I think definitely changed me as a person was um, when in the US people
Mm.
pushed me forward and really told me what I did good and allowed me
Mm.
to be myself in the classroom in terms of I always had things to say or wanted to
Yep,
share things, and they really appreciated that. And I
yep.
felt like in Spain they saw it as a problem, or like, oh, she's like, okay, yes, you know the answer or whatever, but
Mm.
we don't
Mm.
want you to say it, um, or I don't know, but like I felt like in Spain the system, or in my school again, the system was focused on failure in a
Yep,
way, and in
yep.
the other schools that I went to, it was focused on trying the student to be the best. And I think
Mm.
that's how, like, that's what allowed me to thrive as a student. Of course, when I went back after those years, I went back to the same school,
Mm.
and because I had that experience,
Yep.
I it allowed myself to navigate school in Spain in a
Mm.
different way, um, because I knew what I was going there to do. But I think for students that don't know that, it's very difficult, and
Yep.
it makes students continue failing because
Mm.
the
Mm.
system allows people to continuously fail without
Mm.
any sort of help
Yep.
in the system.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest learning I did
Yeah. Yeah.
in school.
Yeah, so from what I hear you say, I think what you're trying to say is like the school system, at least in your school in Spain, it was
Mhm.
almost like fault finding. Like you're just looking for, okay,
Yeah.
what is the student not doing well in? Whereas the school in the US and maybe partly in Hong Kong, they're looking for your strengths, like trying to find what you're good at and trying to build you up based on your strengths, right?
Yes, exactly. Um, and I think the fact that the school wasn't just exams and tests
Mm,
allowed and helped with that because it grew you as a person in
mm,
terms of I went to the youth in government club, which
mm,
allowed me to meet many people around the state of New York while also
mm,
presenting myself, so helping me develop um, speaking skills that I
yeah,
otherwise wouldn't have gotten.
mm,
um,
mm,
and the teachers themselves pushing me to try different things. But let's say, for example, sports. So
yeah,
before the US, I didn't like sports. I always stayed home, and
mm,
I preferred not to take part in sports. But when I went to the US, I knew that to make friends in the US, it was much easier if you
do sports,
did
right?
sports.
Mm,
So I joined first soccer, then basketball, and then softball. And soccer and
mm.
and basketball, I was horrible at them, and that's fine. And I even asked, I always asked to stay like on the bench, but it was still like being part of the school
Be part of
spirit
the
and
team,
being with
right? Yeah.
people. And even the what's it called? The coaches
Mm,
forced me to go play for some
mm,
minutes every game. So
mm,
then
mm.
I joined. So I continued trying. I joined softball because it was the last season of the
Yeah.
year, and I love that sport. And
Mm.
um, after I came back to Barcelona, I actually played for the next 4 years. I'm still not the best athlete in the world. I'm,
Yep.
I think I'm average or below average, but
Mm-mm.
I found something that I was really passionate about, and even when I was bad, um, they didn't like it was not that I was not gonna play. They still put me to play, and
Mm.
I still think that that helped in terms of continuing trying other sports,
Mm.
um,
Mm. Mm.
and finding that which allowed me to thrive in a way.
Yeah, sure, sure. I wonder, like, when you went back to Spain after your two exchange experiences, did you have a chance to share with your teachers about your experiences overseas and in terms of, oh, perhaps this is how our school systems in Barcelona could do better?
Um, I tried pushing for things. So, for example, when I went back after the US, I
Mm.
really wanted something similar to youth and government, so something like a debate club. So
Mm.
I looked for options in Barcelona, and there was a Model United Nations
Mm.
happening.
Mm.
So I pitched to my the head of my grade
Mm.
to go with another one of my classmates to put it in the school,
Mm.
and I was able to do that, but I really don't know like if they continued after because then I went to Hong Kong and I think when I came back it wasn't there. Um,
Mm. And then COVID
but
came, right?
yeah, and then COVID came. So I tried to push for things. They never really asked me directly about um my experiences.
Ah, that's
The thing
interesting.
is, yeah, my school is quite big.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't think they had I mean, they probably had time because, yeah, there's enough teachers, but, yeah, they never really asked me directly, just in general. Um,
Mm.
but, yeah, so I tried to put things like that, but I think in my school it's pretty hard because it's very traditional, so they only
Mm.
like
Mm.
doing
Mm.
things their way. They did allow me to do that, so that was good on
Okay.
them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think now they're trying to push things, forward,
Mm.
um, but even when I came back from Hong Kong and I wanted to go to school abroad, for
Mm.
university, um, it was very hard for me to do the whole process because my school doesn't help in terms of that, so I had to do everything, and
Oh,
actually
right.
my tutor was very good because
Mm.
everything I told her to do, she would do. Like, she
Mm.
would sign
Mm.
and send stuff to universities. I would just
Mm.
draft the emails, and then she would send her from her, like,
Mm.
the
Mm.
things,
Mm.
but she didn't know herself how to do it, so I had to find myself a way to do
Yeah.
it, and yeah,
Would
but
mm. Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, would I be correct to say that not many students, like from at least from your high school, would go overseas to study for university?
Um, some do, but it's very few, and I think the
Mm.
reason for that is because the help's not there,
Mm.
to allow students to do that.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm. Mm.
because, in the UK, to apply, you need your predicted grades,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's not a concept that my school even knew about.
Right.
So I had to make myself like a document, with grades with my tutor, and of course, like, she signed it and she was okay with it, and then I got better grades than that or the same. I think it was better than that. But like, for the school, not to know anything about other opportunities, um, makes for students it's very hard for students to do it themselves
Yeah,
if they don't
definitely.
really have the passion and drive,
Mm.
to do it.
So you're a bit of a trailblazer, aren't you?
Yeah, but I think, yeah, in a way.
I guess one more question related to just your exchange experiences. I guess I already know the answer, but I still want to ask the question
Mhm.
is what kind of advice would you give to someone, let's say year 9 or possibly leaving high school now, thinking of a year overseas? What advice would you have for them?
Um, I'd say definitely do it. My biggest advice for someone is to do it because I think that's what usually holds people back.
Mm,
Um, like, that they're scared about going and leaving their home country.
mm, mm,
And I think that's the reason I had it easy in a way, because in Spain before I went to the US, the first 2 years I was like,
mm,
I
mm,
didn't really
mm,
have
mm.
anything to lose
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
way.
yeah. Mm,
Um, so that was easy for me. But yeah, many students are scared to do it. And I said just do it because you're going to learn many, many things from that. And even if they're bad, they're still very good life experiences, and you're gonna mature a lot
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
from doing that. Um, I'd say in terms of applying, if it's a burden, there's always scholarships
Mm,
to
mm,
go
mm,
into it abroad. Even if it's the last 2 years of high school, I know in Hong Kong it's pretty popular to go to United World College, I think it is,
mm,
where
mm,
you can go
mm,
to a different
mm, mm,
like school to do IB in a different
mm.
country. And I know people I went through that process. So if you want it, there's still going to be options for you to
Yeah.
undertake it and complete it. So I think it's about the drive, and of course, convincing your family, and if that's an issue.
Sure.
But yeah, just definitely go for it. You're gonna learn a lot, um, and I don't think you'll regret the experience.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that. And are you ready for some quick fire questions just to end our conversation?
Sure.
So, how did your teachers describe you? Actually, this is a difficult question because you have had so many different teachers, but just generally, what words do your
Yeah,
teachers use to describe you?
yeah. I think that's an interesting question because I think the different systems saw me as a different student
Mm, mm,
because
mm,
of their own backgrounds. So I'd say in the US they saw me as a very enthusiastic person, very
mm,
cheerful all the time, and I always wanted to try new things.
mm,
Um, I think when I went back to Spain, um, they saw me as hardworking and like, I always tried maybe too hard for them, um,
mm, mm,
in a way.
mm, mm,
I think in Hong Kong, maybe friendly and
mm,
confident,
mm.
um, as well. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I
Uh,
agree with most of those adjectives that you use to describe yourself. What do you think teachers or schools should do more of?
um, More of, I'd say, be more flexible, not too rigid.
Mm,
As in, for example, with the example I gave you in primary, I think people and students deserve second chances, and that's
mm,
going to
mm,
allow them to really grow as a student.
mm,
Um, I think also pointing out things that students are good at. That's
mm.
what really helped me grow as a student when I went to the US,
Yep.
because they really pointed out what I did good. And for example, I know in the grades, like you people put comments, so just not
Mm.
copy pasting everything because students can tell that you've copy pasted the comments. And I know there's in many schools there's a lot of students, but
Mm,
I think everyone still has something that makes them unique, and I think it really makes students drive and encourage to do better. So I'd
definitely.
say that. Um, and
Sure.
probably more international opportunities, or not
Mm.
even international, but locally do more experiences of doing and not just
Yeah.
in the classroom.
Mm, mm, sure, sure. And do you have a funny or strange or scary, touching moment that happened to you? So you've had so many different experiences. What any that's really stand out in terms of out of all those
Um,
experiences? Yeah.
well, funny, I think Savio topped that one with the one of sleeping in the because I wasn't that
Oh, you
near
were
when that
there. You
happened.
were there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that. Yes.
Um, I think touching, probably regarding sports, for
Mm.
softball, I got the Scholar Athlete Award,
Oh,
and that for
wow.
me meant a lot because
Mm.
when they said my name, I even asked like me, like, "Are you sure?"
So you're kind of surprised, right?
Yeah, because I was very surprised because before that, um, I didn't consider myself at all sporty.
Right.
Um, so that meant a lot, not for the award itself, but just to realize how much I had changed as a person in
Yeah,
1 year.
definitely.
So probably that.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. And do you have any questions for me? I mean, I've asked you loads of questions already.
Um, yes. So when you were a student,
Mm.
did you have any teacher that kind of marked you, and why? Like, what was the reason for that?
Marked me. What do you mean by marked me?
As in, like, um, I don't. I think that maybe I did a Spanglish word, and I put it from Spanish. as in touched you or did something that really resonated with you and that really brought you forward as a student or later on?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
just remember that?
yeah, sure. Interestingly, I don't. And that's a surprising thing because most teachers who became teachers normally have a teacher who really inspired them. I would actually say, I mean, it feels a bit mean to my teachers, but I don't think any of my teachers really stood out in terms of doing anything beyond what's expected of them. And so
Okay.
none actually really come to mind. I mean, I do have teachers that I liked, like for example, my German teacher, because he was with me for 7 years. And we just built a really good relationship. But like I said, I mean, it is a bit surprising when I tell people that actually
Yeah.
none of my teachers really stood out in terms of doing anything beyond the ordinary. Yeah, unfortunately. Sorry to disappoint you. How about if I ask you
So
the
is
same
that,
question? Oh yeah,
yeah.
did you follow up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is that why you wanted to become a teacher then? Like,
Yeah,
was
and
that
that's what
something
I
what?
think too. That's what I think too. Sometimes when I think, oh, I'm doing this is something I'm doing that, oh, I would have appreciated if someone had done that for me. Like similar to what you said, actually, noticing the strengths. Like I don't think any teachers really picked up my strengths and told me, oh, this is something you can really try, or really gave me that belief in myself and that I can go on to do
Mhm.
really good things. So I guess that's what I'm trying to do as a teacher. Yeah. If I throw the question back at you, and this is my last
Yeah.
question, any teachers that really you remember very well for good or for bad reasons?
Yeah, so I think the first one was that one I talked to you before,
Yeah.
in primary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because yeah, I still remember that, and giving me that second chance meant a lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for me, even though it was just a small test and you
Yeah, of
know it's
course.
never gonna matter, it did change a lot how I was
Mm-hmm.
as a student later on. Um, I think later in secondary school, when I went to the US, my history
Mm-hmm.
teacher, also it was like I always had a lot to say in class, and I always
Mm-hmm.
asked questions,
Yes, you
and
do. Yes, you
she
do.
always she but she always was happy, and it didn't seem like before people were
Mm.
annoyed at me for asking questions or wanting to say too much, and she always made sure like I felt very appreciated in her class.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so that one as well. Um, and what else? Well, you in Hong Kong as well. I really
Oh,
liked your class.
thank
And I
you.
always told my mom,
Mm.
because I think something very characteristic of good teachers is that they treat students like equally in a way.
Mm.
Like, of
Mm.
course, you're the teacher, but in a friendly manner and still respecting their what they have to say.
That was one long overdue conversation with Alexia, and I have a few takeaways from this conversation. It seems that Alexia has a few very pivotal moments in her life. The first being when she failed really badly in primary school, but because her teacher gave her a second chance, it transformed the way she saw school and the way she thought about how to do well at school. And of course, the two exchange experiences too, in particular the one in the US where she experienced a very different education system, one where the teachers seemed to be more looking for students' strengths to build them up rather than picking on their flaws, and the teachers really pushing them to learn beyond the classroom. And that's how she ended up really enjoying sports. Alexia is a trailblazer. I love her positivity, and the one thing I would say about Alexia is when you are around her, you want to push the boundaries and you want to become better. I hope you enjoyed listening to Alexia's extraordinary story, and please do join us again next time on Ordinary Teachers and Students.